Hi everyone, this is Nitin Kurian and I'll be a presenter for this session on registering new venture. So most of you must have heard of the term startup or must be associated with startups or people who are working in startups and so on. In this session, what I want to uh, inform you is how new businesses or new ventures, including startups, can register. What are some of the advantages of registering? What are some of the special things that you need to be aware of when it comes to registering your company? Uh, First, let's understand what are business registries. Essentially, you are officiating the creation of uh, a new business entity based on the rules of the land. Okay, a business registration is a formalization of the fact that a new business has been created. Now let's also look at who must register. So any business entity that wants to formalize its business processes, that wants to let the public know that such a company has been formed, must undergo the process of registration. So this can include whether it's a small restaurant that you're opening or a new startup that you want to run. No matter what the case is, you must essentially be registering your new company or your new venture. Also, it would be good to understand at this point in time the origins or the genesis of how this registration process came into picture. Uh, there are two main systems that are looking at how the registration process happens. One is in terms of law, the law established in the land, and the other is more in terms of some of the civil systems that are existing in that geography. But irrespective of what the source is, registration becomes an important part of creating and starting your new venture. Within the registration process, let's understand what is being registered. So what are you essentially registering? Uh, you are registering the name of your organization, and you are also looking at some of the uh, associated documents that you need to be officiating or officializing as part of the registration process. Uh, Two important documents are mentioned here. One is called the Memorandum of Association, and two is called the Articles of Association. Both are in some way helping out or helping out to clearly structure or identify what the method of working is going to be for this organization, what the agreement between the uh, shareholders or stakeholders of the company are going to be, and how the company is going to be operating. And as part of the registration process, the business life of this entity will also be made public or will also be available for evaluation or scrutiny. Information like the balance sheet of the company, the PL statement, which is the profit and loss statement of the company, etc., are all filed as part of uh, the process or the registration process, or once the company is officially registered. So uh, it is important to understand that during the registration process, these are the aspects that does get registered, and even after completing your registration process, during the life of the business, there are several informations that you constantly want to keep updating with the entity that you had registered your company with. Now let's look at why uh, registration of a company is important. So registration allows for the dissemination of information about the company, what's the health of the company. So if there are people who would like to invest in your organization, then they would like to know how your company is performing. So the registration process allows a company to uh, disseminate the information around how the company is performing. It also allows the uh, government or the governing body to uh, become a legal watchdog and ensure that no malpractices are being done by the registered company, or no malpractices are conducted by these organizations. So essentially it is a way for the governing bodies to ensure that illegal or illicit activities, especially financial illicit activities, are not carried out by the organization or these entities, and that all the due amount or due money that these entities need to be paying to the government in the form of taxes and so on are being paid promptly by these organizations. Uh, Registering a company also allows these governing bodies to leverage these informations in terms of framing some of the policies. So one example here is that based on the current registration processes in many countries, it was identified that it becomes very difficult to complete the registration process. It's a very time consuming and intensive process, and based on this many countries have reframed their policies for registering new ventures in such a way that the registration process has become much more simplistic. You can even register your venture online and so on. So it also helps in terms of framing policies. Now let's look at some of those special aspects around registration that I was talking about during that introductory session. In that, uh, there are two special entities that you need to be aware of when you're registering your company. And there are what's called the free zone and the special economic zone, which have been created by governing bodies or uh, governments around the world for startups or new companies to come in and leverage some benefits. With regards to free zones, they are mostly located near seaports or airports and uh, promote import and export of goods and services. Okay, and within these free zones, a lot of exemptions are offered for the companies in terms of tax benefits, in terms of benefits for uh, exporting and importing of commodities, any sort of import tax, any sort of export tax, etc. There is a lot of exemption for such companies. So if you are an entrepreneur who is thinking about starting a venture related to imports and exports and so on, then you should probably consider registering your venture with